Hello and welcome to my January and February wrap-up. I was going to do separate wrap-ups as normal, but in January I spent quite a lot of time being unwell, and it just got later and later and later in the month, and I thought, you know what? I'm going to cut myself some slack. I'm just going to do January with my February wrap-up as a combined double month wrap up. So that's what you're in for today. So before I get started with books, I wanted to briefly mention this little comic which my partner got me for Christmas. It's called Reapers and it's about houseplants that kill. It's kind of a cute horror, if that makes sense. If you are a houseplant fanatic, as I am, then I think you'll really get a kick out of this. I really enjoyed it. But I read it in December, so I'm not going to talk about it anymore. Let's just pretend I remembered to mention it in my December wrap-up and move on. So, I started January by still being in the Christmassy mood, and I listened to An Almost Perfect Christmas by Nina Stibbe. Or Stibbe? I think Stibbe. I think she pronounced it Stibbe. Anyway, it was read by the author, I think, in the audiobook, and I kind of didn't get along with her sort of dry narration style. I don't know. It just kind of wasn't for me. But I did enjoy the stories, most of them. It's kind of a collection of anecdotes but also short stories. So some of the short stories are like fictional properly short stories and others sort of anecdotes from the author's life, or at least they are portrayed that way. And so yeah, the stories and the anecdotes were good and got me in the Christmas spirit, or prolonged my Christmas spirit more accurately. So yeah, that was good. I enjoyed that. I don't think I'll pick it up again next year, but yeah, I would recommend if you want a little bit of Christmas magic. Next Christmas probably, or in the run-up to Christmas, not now in March. Then I listened to another audiobook, The Colour of Magic by Terry Pratchett. I've decided that I'm going to work my way through all of the Discworld books in order, so I started with The Colour of Magic, and I can see why people tell people not to start with The Colour of Magic, and I didn't start with The Colour of Magic. I've read most of the Tiffany Aching books, so that was, this wasn't my first taste of the Discworld, but if you haven't read any of them, I would strongly recommend not starting with this one, because I can see exactly why people don't recommend it. It is a bit... it's not difficult exactly, it just doesn't have the same kind of easy flowing magic. It's funny, but it's not as funny as I found the Tiffany Aching books to be by a long way. Like, I was, when I first read the We Free Men, I was just like constantly laughing. I remember it being so hilarious, but The Colour of Magic is not. There were a couple of chuckles once I got into it, and the story was fine. And as somebody who tends to be a bit of a completist, I was glad to read it, and I'm now partway through listening to The Light Fantastic, which is the second Discworld book, so it didn't put me off. But yeah, I agree with all those people who are like, don't bother, or listen to it later on, don't make it your first Discworld book. Yeah, I agree. The Colour of Magic is about a wizard who encounters Discworld's first tourist, and the premise is quite funny, but the execution leaves a little to be desired, I think, which is fair enough. It was one of his early books, and he came a long way. After that, I finished a book which I had been working on for months, Bookworm, a memoir of childhood reading by Lucy Mangan. I got this from NetGalley, oh god, so long ago, I don't even know. And then I didn't finish it before it expired, and so I had a bit of a wait. But luckily the library got it on... I can talk today, can't I? Luckily the library got it on ebook, so I was able to read it, but people kept requesting it. It's quite a popular book because I kept not finishing it and then it going back and not finishing it and then it going back. But eventually I have finished it and I really enjoyed it and would recommend it. It goes through basically all the stages of her childhood reading journey, and talks about all these books, some of which I'd read, a lot of which I hadn't read. And yeah, I thought it was fabulous. There are a couple of points I disagreed on, such as at one point she says that all bookworms want to live in the countryside, and I don't know, maybe that's true if you're like a proper introvert bookworm, but I am not an introvert bookworm. I am either a ambivert or a extrovert with social anxiety, as I've said before. I am not a true blue dyed-in-the-wall introvert by any stretch of the imagination, and no, I would not want to live in the countryside. I like living in London. I like going to parties from time to time, plenty of alone time too, but yeah, no, that is not my dream. But otherwise, yeah, I am there with her on pretty much all of the books that we've both read. Yeah, I love The Secret Garden more than A Little Princess, but who doesn't? At this point in my life, it was mid-January and I got sick. And when I was sick, I thought, I don't want to read anything too taxing. I want to read something that's going to be quite easy to get into. And so I picked up a Buffy the Vampire Slayer tie-in novel, which I haven't read one of these in so long, probably years at this point. I remember the last time I read one, it was really weird because it was like written as if it was now, like people had like broadband internet and stuff, which didn't make any sense because they definitely didn't have broadband internet when Buffy was at school. Like, no, that was not a thing. Anyway, this is a much older book than this one. Let's have a look. 2006? Yeah, 2006. And yeah, so this is from Faith's point of view, and it's written like a diary, which is point number one against it, because I cannot buy that Faith would keep a diary. Nah, she's not a girl. And point number two against it is just that it's terrible. I mean, it's just not good. It was like, I think the plot was probably okay, but the execution, no, she just wasn't a convincing teenage girl, and there was just some like really, there was some really bad like sexual assault, rapey stuff in there that was treated far too lightly considering the subject matter. And you know what? I think though, when I was a teenage Buffy fan, I probably would have really enjoyed this, but now I'm older and wiser, and I feel like when grisly things happen to women in books and films and other media, I kind of feel it more deeply, if that makes sense, because I'm kind of more aware of the world. Yeah, as an adult, I just can't. No, it's terrible. I can't recommend that at all. I hope that I would still enjoy some of the other Buffy tie-in novels I've read in my life, but yeah, no, I don't want to read that one again ever. Next up, February. So the first book I finished reading in February was How to Be Both by Ali Smith. I'd heard a fair amount of hype around this, and then I had to read it for my work book club. Or, I mean, I'm not forced to go to my work book club, so I chose to read it for my work book club. It was the book we had voted on. And I did vote for this because I knew I could get it from the library, which I did. I actually had it on ebook first, and then it had to go back. And so I had to finish reading it in hard copy because I couldn't get the ebook again before the time I needed to read the book. Which is kind of a strange reading experience because this book is in two halves. There are two characters who have points of view. And they're told entirely separately. So you get one character's version of the story and another character's version of the story, for lack of a better explanation. And in my ebook, it did actually say you can read whichever part you like first, but I just decided to read it linearly the way it was. And then when I got this hard copy, it was actually the other way around to the ebook. So I had to finish off reading at the back and then start from the front, which is really, strange. But yeah, I actually like that. I mean, it's kind of difficult to describe this book without spoiling what it's about. And I think if you're going to read this, then you're better going into it without really any knowledge of what's going on. So there's two characters. One of them is a painter, a now long dead painter, and then one's a teenage girl now. And the camera and the eye, and the teenage girl's the camera and the painter's the eye. And I read the eye before the camera, whereas everybody else in my book club read the camera before the eye. And from what they were saying, I am pleased that I read the eye first, because I think it gave more depth to the camera story, because quite a few people said that they found the camera a bit easy to read, but they didn't feel like it had a lot of depth to it. Whereas then people who read the eye bit first were like, nobody read the eye bit first, what am I saying? People who read the eye bit second were like, oh, I didn't get why this is happening after that. So I actually, I'm of the opinion that the way I read it was the best way to read it. But who knows? Your mileage may vary. Let me know what you think. Did I enjoy it though? I did enjoy it, but it didn't blow me away. It didn't give me any lasting food for thought. But yeah, it was fine. It was interesting. It was fun. I would probably read the eye section again, but possibly not the camera. If you can read half of the book. The next book I finished reading is called Fame, Stripping Celebrity Bare, and it has this kind of lurid cover, which I hate. And this is a book I got out of my work library. I work at a university. I was doing a whole bunch of research for my novel on celebrity culture, and most of the books I just kind of picked bits of. So I would read just those chapters I thought were relevant to my research and not the rest, or I'd just kind of scan read and pick out paragraphs and write down some quotes. This I actually ended up reading cover to cover. I wasn't expecting to read any of them cover to cover, so that was a surprise. This is actually written by a journalist, and it's basically he looks at different celebrities that he's encountered in his time as a celebrity journalist, and how he thinks they deal with fame, and he talks about what he thinks the healthier ways to deal with fame are, whilst also being quite sceptical of the good of fame as a concept for mankind. And it was really interesting. I thought that he was a bit mean. I don't know, it's just me. He was very harsh on some celebrities and very kind of generous towards others. And I mean, he had met a lot of these people, so I guess his impressions are not just based on like, pure conjecture. He has actually met them, and he has opinions on how they appear to be as people from his encounters with them. However, he's not their friend or family member, so it's like, how well does he know them really? It's strange. I have a lot of thoughts about the kind of the point of view of the writer in this book. It's interesting. But yeah, it was actually really helpful for my novel research. Probably the second most helpful out of the books that I was looking at for research purposes. And yeah, so that's that done. And that was I've done all the research I wanted to do now into celebrity culture, so that's nice. I have one more book that I want to read for research, but it's not on the history and the consequences of celebrity in the same way as these other books, and I bought that one, so yeah, I'm going to read it at a slightly more leisurely pace. After that, I wanted a kind of short fictional break, and at my work book club meeting, we'd been asked to say if we had any suggestions for books that we could read in the future, and I suggested Convenience Store Woman because I've seen a lot of hype about this on BookTube, and I was really, really intrigued, and I'd recently picked up a copy for myself, and I wanted a good excuse to read it soon, and it was selected. I managed to sell it to everybody. I brought this copy to the meeting where we discussed how to be both and passed it round, and everybody was like, yeah, that sounds cool, we'll give it a go. And so we are discussing a book club in April, but I've read it already because I couldn't resist. I really, really enjoyed this. It was just as thought-provoking as everyone says. So it's about a woman who's worked at a convenience store for most of her life at this point. I guess most of her life at this point. Okay, she started working there when she was 18, and she's now 36. So yeah, she started working there as a student, and she's continued working there, and basically all her family and friends think she should move on with her life, but she's so happy in this environment. But then she encounters another employee at the store who quickly gets fired, and he sort of she suggests that they come to an arrangement to keep their friends and families happy, and it doesn't go as she thought it would go, and things sort of unravel. And I can't really say anything more than that because it would spoil it, and I think you need to get there on your own through reading this book. I think if you go in with too much knowledge, then it won't be as thought-provoking as it is. So yeah, I really, really love this, and I'm really looking forward to discussing it with my book club, because yeah, there is a lot of food for thought in this. There's just so much, and I would thoroughly recommend it. Another book that provides a lot of food for thought was All the Lonely People, which is another book I got from the library for a book club. Now this was for Book Club YA, which is a book club I organise with Chloe Seeger, that takes place in Waterstones, Piccadilly, once every other to once every 3 months, and we discuss YA books, funnily enough. We're all adults, so we can have cocktails while we discuss the books, and it's fun. If you check out the link in the description, I'll put the link in the description to where you can join the Facebook group that we have for Book Club YA, and also for Drink YA and Picnic YA, which I run with my other friend Jim. Anyway, All the Lonely People, I really, really enjoyed this. I was so looking forward to reading it. And yeah, I've actually done really well this month at reading my book club books in advance of book club. Normally what happens is I am still trying to finish the book on the morning of book club, but I have been organised and it's been great. I highly recommend being organised, by the way. So yeah, All the Lonely People is about a girl who she's kind of hounded off the internet by bullies at her school who are kind of involved in these kind of alt-right communities of trolls online, and when she finally deletes her own website, she turns invisible. People can't see her, and it's about her trying to figure out what's happened to her and what she's going to do now, and also about one of the boys who bullied her and why he did what he did, his family background, and what he does next once he realises what he's done. So yeah, again, I don't really want to say more than that because I don't want to spoil it. I think it's better if you go in there and you find out what's going on. I found it very, very creepy, but not like brutally disturbing in the way that a real horror novel can be. It has this very, very good, strong atmosphere of utter dread, and you're like, oh, this is really creeping me out. This is horrible. You imagine it happening to you or someone you love, or anybody at all, just an acquaintance, really, and it's just horrifying. But at the same time, it's quite kind of fair and generous to all the characters, and the ending, I don't want to spoil the ending, but yeah, there's some stuff left open and it's interesting. So yeah, let me know if you read this because I would love to discuss it some more. Finally, the last book I finished reading in the month of February was Brooklyn, and I'm ashamed to say, no, what am I saying? I am not ashamed to say this. I didn't like it. I didn't like it, and I'm a bit mystified that it's been made into a film, because what is the content of the film? Does that make any sense? Because the main character in this is just really kind of passive, and stuff just kind of, she kind of goes along with what other people want her to do until right near the end, and I just can't really see how that's going to make a very interesting film. I don't really, like, I don't think the story works as a book, so I think it's even less likely to work as a film. And there's been a lot of hype over this book. I've heard lots of people liking it, and winner of the 2009 Costa Novel Award. So I was quite excited to read it and optimistic, but yeah, the overly passive heroine just wasn't for me, and there were some really, really long, there were some really, really long descriptive sections where really mundane actions were described in what I thought was far too much detail, and I just wanted to get on with it, really. My overriding feeling whilst reading this book was that it should have been a short story. That even as a quite short novel, there's just a bit too much filler, and yeah, I think it could have been whittled down to be a really, really powerful, moving short story. But as it is, the plot and the intriguing elements of the characters were just kind of buried in really slow pacing and too much detail. So yeah, I'm quite sad because I hope that I would enjoy this, and I am going to try one of the author's other books, because I have The Testament of Mary by the same author on my pile of books that I'm setting aside for Short Book September this year. But yeah, this one, definitely not the one for me. So, thank you very much for watching. Please subscribe if you would like to see more of me, and give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. If you would like to read more books or want to get involved in the bookish community but don't know where to start, check out my free e-course, Ignite Your Passion for Reading, Fall in Love with Books, and also pass it on to any friends that you might think might be interested. All my social media links are also in the description box, so if you would like to see more from me before my next video, you can follow me there. Thanks again, you'll see me again soon. Bye!